Welcome to today's weekly press conference with head coach Terry Bowden. This week, after a bye week, Akron returns home for its annual homecoming game and the MAC opener with Miami on Saturday, October 6th. Kickoff is at 3:30 on ESPN+. Coach, would you like to start with an opening statement?
Yep, after 25 years, I'm still undefeated versus bye. I've won every single time that I've played bye, but we are bye. We've said goodbye to bye, and we're getting ready for a very good Miami football team that spanked us pretty bad last year, and both sides of the ball, and coming off a tough loss to Western Michigan, where they missed a field goal at the end of the game that would have won it for them, and then and a good win versus Bowling Green. We are preparing for our first conference game, which we're anxious to get into, but also preparing for a very, very well-coached, tough, physical football team with a real leader at quarterback and some playmakers. And so we've had a good week of practice. We had 3 days. We worked hard Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of our off week. We let the guys off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and now we've been able to go this week, game week. And so we're getting ready to play a football game. And I'll just we had a tough loss to, I guess we never got to meet after the Iowa State game, but a tough loss to Iowa State. And again, you played Northwestern and you played your hearts out and you played good and you won. You played Iowa State and you played your hearts out and you played pretty good and you lost. But those were two pretty good football teams. You know, it's funny, we scored 13 points against Iowa State offensively. Iowa scored 13 points and won. Last week, TCU, which won the top 10, they scored 17 and won. So they're good. They're a pretty good football team. Interesting enough, I watched Northwestern play Michigan. You know, we had 21 defensive points against Northwestern, but we had 18 offensive points. Michigan scored 20. And so you know, you don't know where we are, but we played some pretty good people. And so I'm anxious to see how we're going to play when we line up in our conference. And because we've come against some people that are probably better than anybody in our conference from the top to bottom, in Iowa State and Northwestern. But we got to line up and see if we can do it now, because this is a Eastern Division game against a opponent that is 1-1 in the conference, and we're all in the conference play now. Those non-conference games don't count. And I'm ready for questions.
Describe the way your linebackers are playing.
Playing like veterans. They're playing like veterans because that's what they are. They are veterans. You got senior Ulysses Gilbert. You got senior Brian Bell, and John Lako he may be a junior. He's a senior, but I'm not sure he's a fifth-year senior or just he's a junior. But he's been around a long time, and he played last year almost the whole season. And so you've got some guys that have played a lot of football. We did lose for the season. We lost DeMarcus Lloyd, who I think is going to get a 6th year with an injury. Since he had an injury last year to his shoulder, he's going to be possibly eligible for a 6th year, and which wouldn't hurt since we're going to lose some. But the linebacker play has been very good. I mean, they should be. They're veterans, and they've been in a lot of big ball games. And now they're coached by somebody different. Joe Tracy's, he coaches his own style, and he's not Chuck Amato. And, but boy, they picked it up well, and I'm very pleased with the way they have played, and the way they are playing now, and that's very important to us. Those linebacker positions have been playing very, very, very well.
What has moving Bell inside done for that group?
I just think it fits his demeanor. That's just what we needed. We needed a tough guy in there. You know, you got to have a tough guy to play between the tackles, and Bell is a tough, physical football player. He's about 6'2", 230, and likes contact. You know, the two outside guys can really run well. Of course, Ulysses can run very, very fast, but John Lako is under a 4.6. You know, he runs very well as well. And so, but I think Brian Bell, as he's now gotten accustomed to playing the middle linebacker position, that gives us 3 very, very solid players. And if they play well, we got a chance to be a good football team, because they're responsible not just for stopping the run, but in coverage and you know, when you don't have to take them out and you can play your 11, when people run the ball on 3rd and long or 3rd and medium, it gives you a better chance of stopping the run on pass situations as well. So they've done very well. Joe Tracy, our co-defense coordinator, has done a good job with those linebackers.
The gold standard for defense since you've been here is probably that 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes.
Well,
Can this one stack up to that, do you think?
Well, we're early in the season, and we've got to continue to play well and get better every day. I think this team clearly has the potential to be as good or better than that team. But every team has to stand on its own merits. But I'm just saying this is a veteran football team because we just talked about the linebackers, but you got secondary that's 3 out of 4 seniors that have had a lot of playing experience, and the underclassman Alvin Davis is maybe one of the better players on the football team. Defensive line, with the 2 defensive ends, Jamal Davis having an outstanding year, but Josh Ward is coming to his own this year as well. And then throw in Justin Sampson there, and Brady, along with Brady. They've got some good players there that are playing well. And then inside, Brock Boxon and Brendan Williams are playing well. So again, we've got to stay healthy. If they have a chance, if we'll just continue to play hard, we're going to be tested this week by an offense that can put points on the board. If you look at their conference games, Miami's conference games, their offense has put points on the board. They got up on Bowling Green very, very fast. And they got up on Western Michigan very, very fast. And then Western Michigan, they allowed them to come back into the game. So our defense will be tested this week, that's for sure.
Continuing the defensive track,
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Davis seems to have elevated his game or picked up from where he left off last year.
He really was learning. He's been a stand-up linebacker all his career out of Canton McKinley, Pitt transferring back to here. And as he got bigger, we decided to move him down. He's got such great explosiveness. And last year he was the last 3 games he played very well at defensive end. And now he's starting to really understand how to play the position. And so he has a chance to be one of the better ones in the better defensive ends in the conference, because he's not just ability to get to the passer, but he's tackles for loss and stopping the run as well. So I'm really he's one of those guys that a lot of guys can't do it. He's got a motor that doesn't stop. If the game goes 60 or 70 plays, he can play 60 or 70. We had a great defensive end named Jamal Marcus a couple of years ago. He'd get about 15 plays, full speed. You couldn't block him, but he'd have to take a breather. Just his heart, he'd get his heart beating so much he'd have to stop. Jamal Davis can play all day long at a full speed, and that's one of his strengths. It does. And so.
Brumage was hurt early in the season. Are you going to get him back?
He's getting back. We thought it was much more serious when it first happened, but he's been rehabilitating, and so he's starting to get some work now. And we need that number back. We lost John Baptiste, for the year with a broken leg, as we lost Featherstone with a broken leg, and so Brumage getting back would be important to us. But Devontae Jest is back. He sprained an ankle early, and he's back and playing well. And he's one of the better when he plays his best. He's right there with those 2 starters.
Coach, in Saturday's matchup, give us one of your units offensively, one defensively. Do you think we're going to have to really rise up to help you guys win?
Well, I think the way they play man coverage, I think our receivers who are talented, but a little bit more inexperienced than you would like, I think that's going to be a real challenge. Also, they'll bring pressure on the quarterback a lot. Can we protect our quarterback? So I think. But if you had to pick one thing, I would say to challenge our receivers to win some one-on-one battles. In that sport, then defensively, don't let Ragland control the game. He threw 3 touchdown passes last week. Threw 3 against us last year. Had a couple of picks. He doesn't throw picks hardly ever, but he had a couple against us. But he also threw 3 touchdowns. Yeah, and then again, the running game against Iowa State, I'm anxious to see how it goes. We need to run. I could have said the running game is the key, because that takes the pressure off the receivers, and it keeps you more balanced on offense. You just have to look at. They're pretty good at stopping the run now. This is one of the better defenses in the conference last year, and they're pretty good stopping the run. But we've got to be able to get some run in there. and that's going to be important too. So you can almost pick and choose different phases. But again, I'm anxious to see. We rushed really, a lot of yardage the first game, but you better rush for a lot of yardage the first game, and not nearly as much against two pretty good people, and especially Iowa State. I think they're pretty sporty. I think of a great running team that Iowa is, and they put 13 points on the board against Iowa State, and we don't have that type of power running. But we need to Van Edwards had a great preseason, great spring, and we need to break him out a little bit in the secondary.
Does your mindset change because it is conference now? I mean, what are you telling these guys that's different from the non-conference game?
Well, I mean, everything. I mean, the goal is to try to win your division, and it's different. It feels different. As much as when you go into games against Power 5 conferences, you can say what you want to, but there's less stress there because you go in, people don't think you can win. Your kids go in, you're a little bit more relaxed. And I'm speaking as a coach and a player. You get into your conference and everybody's pretty good. That's the one thing about this conference, and it's unlike any I've been a part of, where you look at, the year I came in here, Kent State was playing for the conference championship, and then the year before that, I think Miami was playing for the conference championship, and every year it's so close, you're in a battle every week, and so but our kids know what this is. This is an Eastern Division team. This is a team that beat us pretty soundly last year, and this is a team we got to beat to reach our goals, and they had to beat us, that's the same. So it is different. It is different in that, the only thing that the non-conference count towards that bowl game, it counts toward bowl eligibility, and that's important. By all means, that's important. But these kids want to compete for the Mid-American Conference Championship, and you got to take your games one at a time. And Eastern Division games are critical because if you they all count one win if they're in conference, but if you beat one of your Eastern Division opponents, that's another loss on their record. So. That makes sense.
What's the next step Cato has to take to elevate his game?
I think he has to stay focused and sharp every play. Stay focused every play. The older you get, the more mature you get, the more you are you don't have when a play is there, you make it. And so it's the closer you can get to making the plays each and every play. So he just says continue to be as consistent as he can to manage our offense and to get us in the end zone.
Do you feel this is maybe a game where he can really break out against a defense that's given up almost 250 yards?
The thing about that's why I mentioned the receivers. I think Cato can throw the football. We've got to have some receivers that can get open. The thing that you see is they got ahead of both the conference teams early, and the other teams had to throw it every down. So now you get a little bit skewed in statistics because they jumped on Bowling Green. It was 31-3 at some point, halftime, not much after half, and so Bowling Green's throwing it every down. They were ahead of Western Michigan 27-13 or something by halftime, and it was 24 to 14 maybe at halftime, and then it went up higher than that, and so they had to throw it a lot. But I'd rather stay balanced and not have a big throwing day and have a good balanced offensive day. But again, the game will dictate that. But I think you have to look at the stats, who they played and how they played. How the other teams had to play against them.
So we start practice around August 1.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2 months you played 3 games.
Yeah, it's unusual. The fact that we don't ever have an off week usually this early,
Right.
and then we have a game that Nebraska that we didn't play. And Nebraska was a very, very tiresome game because when you go out there and pregame warm up and sit in the locker room for 5 hours and make that trip out there and the anxiety builds up and all that, you feel like you've played at least a game, maybe a game and a half, and you haven't played a game. And so we have been through 4 games from a standpoint of just the mental drain, and maybe more so on a game like that because of how keyed up you are and how long you sit. But you're right. But it's kind of weird being into October and having 3 games gone and having to unable to get a 12th game on your schedule at this point. Although Nebraska was able to get Bethune-Cookman, You know, we had an off week. If we could have known something that day that Nebraska, we could have gotten maybe something by the off week, because a lot of teams were canceling games during that storm, that we could have picked up in our off week, probably even on a couple of weeks' notice.
Are there any, you mentioned defensively, without Coach Amato and Coach Stroud taking over as coordinator and some other, is there fundamental things you're doing differently maybe this year than you did before?
No, you know, Coach Stroud was with Coach Amato so much that they went, even on the sidelines together, they called plays together. And I think the fact that I'm just encouraged by the way Todd and Joe work together, and that comes throughout the week as they prepare the game plan and work with. Of course, Otis Mounds handles the entire back end as Mike Woodford went to the special teams, and Otis handles the entire secondary. Of course, Marcus Watley with the outside linebacker defensive ends also does a good job. But I think Todd and Joe, I was anxious to see how that would go. The schemes haven't changed that much, but and I don't know whether it's because you got a bunch of seniors out there that know what they're doing, or we're doing things differently. But they are playing, playing pretty good football.
Coach, you talked about the freshmen and the redshirt.
Mm.
You've got 8 games, and those kind of aces in the hole. Those 3 games, you can pick and choose where to put those.
You know, we're having a problem now. We're having to get with Alex that the game. There was one play in that game. Does Nebraska count as a game, or does it not? We're trying to get final determination. Well, that's what I'm thinking. But he's told us that he thinks we have to treat it like that until he finds out for sure, because the ball was kicked off. But as we found out from Nebraska, they said it was not an official game because nobody touched it. But from a standpoint of eligibility, has nothing to do with NCAA rules of a game. So we got to make sure we follow that. But we've got to make some decisions as some freshmen, I think, about what we use, especially some that are playing special teams. About whether to use them and what will. I don't think you can. When I was younger, maybe I don't ever think about who I have 5 years down the road on a team. And the great thing about this, we have some freshmen. If they had to play the last 4 games, that's where they'd really be valuable because they're learning every day. We've got some young Brimage, receiver Brimage and Scipio are just getting better and better. We have a transfer from Ohio State. You love his name, Boogie Knight. Boogie's pretty good. And every time he catches the ball, I get my phone out of my pocket and I play Boogie Knight. I'm that old. It makes me want to do that. I'm that old.
You got Heat Wave on your phone.
I do have Heat Wave on my. No, I can YouTube it. I don't have any of Heat Wave albums on my phone, but it doesn't take about 5 seconds to find that signed Heat Wave on YouTube. No, I think the player, he's really won us over in his abilities. He's from up in Andalusia, I believe. Not Andalusia, that's in Alabama. Where's Jefferson. He's up in Jefferson. What's the town? Yeah. Yes, he's right up there where Coach Urban Meyer's from, I think up there in that area.
I guess I hit this almost every week, this rule. And I was sitting on the couch all day watching football on Saturday. And of course with Clemson and Alabama, now it's a whole different thing with the quarterbacks. But the coaches pushed for this rule, and I don't know if anybody anticipated some of these consequences we're seeing or not.
Which rule are you talking about? The transfer?
I'm talking about, about would Hurts leave after 4 games, and Kelly Bryant's going to leave after 4 games. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe he comes back.
These are questions that we don't know the answers to. Because you're talking about a transfer.
There's been a bunch of them.
Yeah, and I think we've seen the trend of quarterbacks because if you're a top program, you're going to try to sign a great quarterback every year, and if he's a great quarterback, he'll feel like he can beat anybody out. Well, if they don't do it after a year, they don't sit anymore and graduate from old State U. They go find them another place to graduate from and where they can play. So we've seen that trend now with the four-game redshirt rule, 4-game rule where you don't have to count that year of eligibility. It gives them even more leeway. But I think we all just have to see how it's going to go and where it's going to go. Because on one hand, it can mess up your chemistry if you take a transfer and put him ahead of a junior or a senior that's worked hard and is kind of good, but then there's a great one that maybe he's real good. You just so those are some interesting things that you always have to consider.